Anna had always believed that life with David was calm, predictable, and safe, the kind of marriage that others admired because it seemed stable and unshakable, the kind where dinners were shared in quiet harmony. Mornings started with soft sunlight filtering through the curtains, and weekends were spent in a rhythm of errands, coffee, and television. Yet underneath all of that ordinary comfort, Anna felt a subtle emptiness she could never quite name, a longing that whispered in the quiet moments when David was away at work or lost in his own thoughts. The feeling of missing something vital that she hadn't even realized was gone until it quietly began to ache, and she tried to fill it with routines, with smiles, with laughter that sometimes felt forced, but the emptiness persisted, lingering like a shadow she couldn't shake. And on one particularly rainy evening, as drops pattered gently against the windows and the scent of wet earth mingled with the warmth of the house, Anna sat alone, her hands wrapped around a cup of steaming tea, staring out at the blurred world outside, wondering if this quiet longing was a sign that she had changed, or if life itself had shifted while she was too busy moving through the motions, when there was a soft knock at the door, a sound so unexpected that it startled her, and for a moment her heart leapt with surprise because no one was supposed to come over at this hour. She wasn't expecting visitors, and yet there he was, Liam, an old friend from college, standing in the doorway with rain-damp hair and a small suitcase, a smile that somehow brought memories flooding back of laughter-filled days, late-night conversations, and dreams they had once shared. The kind of friend whose presence felt like a warm light suddenly entering a dim room, and Anna's heart responded in a way she hadn't anticipated, a flutter of excitement, a twinge of nostalgia, and a quiet curiosity about how someone could appear so suddenly and make everything feel different in an instant. And Liam, noticing her surprise, apologized for the sudden visit but explained he had been in the city for work and thought he would stop by, his voice calm and familiar, carrying with it a warmth that made Anna feel seen in a way that had become rare in her daily life. And as she stepped aside to let him in, the small apartment felt different somehow, the air charged with a subtle tension and anticipation she couldn't yet name. And Liam's eyes scanned the room with gentle interest, noting the books on the shelves, the framed photographs, the little touches that made the space feel lived in, and he commented lightly, asking questions about her life, her work, her days, as if he genuinely wanted to know. And Anna found herself responding with more openness than she had with David in weeks, feeling a strange mixture of comfort and excitement, of familiarity and novelty, that made her pulse quicken. And they moved into the living room, where the rain drummed steadily on the roof, and they talked about everything and nothing, about the old days, about shared memories, about the dreams they had once had and the paths they had taken since. And Anna realized how much she had missed this kind of connection. A connection that wasn't about routine or obligation, but about attention, about listening, about laughter, about the feeling that someone truly noticed you. And as Liam spoke, his words casual but full of subtle warmth, she felt a spark she hadn't felt in years, a reminder of the joy of being genuinely understood. And it made her heart ache softly for what had been lost and also for what she hadn't even realized she was missing. And when he laughed at a story he told about a misadventure from his college days, Anna laughed too, a sound that felt pure and light, and it surprised her how freeing it felt to be unguarded, how good it felt to experience a small moment of genuine connection, something that had been absent from her life in ways she had been too busy to notice. And as the evening wore on, the rain outside softened, and the apartment filled with the glow of lamps casting gentle shadows, Anna felt a strange mixture of comfort and unease, of happiness and confusion, because while she treasured the memories Liam stirred and the warmth he brought, she also felt the weight of loyalty and love for David, a love that had not diminished but had perhaps grown quiet under the demands of life. And in that moment, she realized that emotions could be complex, that the heart could experience joy, longing, nostalgia, and excitement all at once, and that this unexpected visit was more than just a friendly call. It was a subtle awakening, a gentle reminder that life and love could hold surprises, that even in a marriage that seemed steady and safe, there was room for growth, reflection, and self-discovery. And as Liam stood by the window, glancing at the rain-soaked streets outside, Anna noticed the way he carried himself, the easy confidence in his posture, the kindness in his eyes, and she felt a warmth spread through her chest, a recognition that sometimes the heart notices things before the mind understands, that sometimes a presence could quietly transform the way one sees the world and oneself. and when he finally took his leave, the hug at the door lingered just a second too long, enough to leave a trace of electricity, enough to imprint a memory she knew would not fade quickly, and as she closed the door behind him, Anna leaned against it for a moment, her mind racing, her heart pounding with thoughts she hadn't expected, realizing that something had shifted inside her, that the quiet life she had taken for granted could now feel both familiar and strangely new, that love and longing could coexist in unexpected ways, and that perhaps this unplanned visit was the start of a journey she hadn't imagined but now couldn't ignore, and she sat back down by the window, watching the last drops of rain slide down the glass, feeling the echoes of laughter, the warmth of conversation, and the subtle excitement of what might come next, knowing that life had a way of surprising even those who thought they had settled into predictability, and that sometimes, the smallest knock on the door could awaken emotions, memories, and possibilities that had lain dormant for years, leaving Anna both terrified and exhilarated at the thought of what the days ahead might hold, as her mind replayed the evening over and over, savoring each smile, each word, each fleeting glance, and realizing that life, love, and the heart's desires were rarely simple, that joy and longing often intertwined, and that in that quiet apartment on a rainy evening, with the city muted and soft outside, her heart had been quietly transformed. A change she didn't yet fully understand but knew would ripple through everything she thought she knew about herself, David, and the subtle, unexpected ways life could awaken feelings and open doors to new beginnings. Days passed since Liam's unexpected visit, and Anna found herself thinking about him more than she cared to admit, the memory of his laughter, the gentle way he noticed things about her life, and the warmth of his presence lingering in her mind. And even as she went about her daily routines with David, helping him with breakfast, tidying the house, sharing small moments of conversation, she couldn't shake the feeling that something inside her had shifted, a quiet stirring she hadn't felt in years, a reminder of the depth of human connection that could be missed when life fell into patterns too predictable, and Liam's presence, though brief, had made her realize how lonely familiarity could sometimes feel, even when love was present, and she found herself replaying snippets of conversation. His subtle smiles, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about things he cared about, and she wondered if it was wrong to feel a thrill at such memories while sitting across from David, who was absorbed in his own work, oblivious to the storm of emotions quietly unfolding in his wife's heart, and Anna tried to dismiss the thoughts, telling herself that Liam was just a friend, that the past should stay in the past, that her life with David was real and sufficient, but every time she saw a message from him, or a social media post, or even just a familiar street that reminded her of their college days, she felt a flicker of longing, a bittersweet mix of nostalgia and excitement that she hadn't felt in a long time, and she noticed that her own emotions had become more sensitive, reacting to small gestures and words in ways that surprised her, making her wonder if her heart had been quietly waiting for something it hadn't recognized, something that Liam had unknowingly awakened with his return. And as he began to visit more often, citing work reasons or coincidental errands nearby, Anna felt the rhythm of her days subtly rearranging itself around him, the sound of his voice at the door filling her with a mix of anticipation and worry, the sight of him settling into her living room chair making her pulse quicken even though nothing overt happened. And it was the little things that struck her most, the way he remembered the way she liked her tea, the way he asked about her day without seeming to check a box, the way he laughed with ease, a laughter that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds, and it made her heart ache with a strange, tender longing, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years, and yet she was also acutely aware of her commitment to David, the man she had chosen to spend her life with, the man who had stood by her through ordinary days and quiet struggles, and she felt torn, caught between loyalty and the undeniable stirrings of her heart, a tension that made each interaction with Liam both exhilarating and frightening. And one afternoon, as the three of them coincidentally crossed paths in the city, Anna noticed the subtle tension that hung in the air, David laughing about a minor work challenge while Liam listened intently, offering observations that were thoughtful and sometimes playful, and Anna felt a pull she didn't fully understand, the simultaneous comfort of familiarity and the thrill of new attention pressing on her heart in ways she hadn't anticipated. And as the days grew warmer, she found excuses to spend time with Liam alone, not out of intention to betray, but out of a desire to explore the depths of connection and emotion she had long ignored, noticing how easy it was to share stories, dreams, and fears with someone who listened without judgment, and she began to realize how starved she had been for attention that felt meaningful, a connection that reminded her she was more than routines, more than the caretaker of a quiet household, more than the predictable partner in a marriage that had settled into comfort. And Liam seemed to sense this too, not in words, but in the subtle attentiveness of his presence, the way he asked questions, the way he remembered details she had forgotten she had shared, the way he could make her laugh with ease, and even small silences felt charged, moments that were peaceful yet full of unspoken understanding. And Anna found herself craving these exchanges, wondering why she had allowed the quiet drift of life to dull the spark of her own heart. And each night, as she reflected on the day, she felt both guilt and exhilaration, guilt for the growing affection that stirred within her despite her love for David, and exhilaration at feeling alive again, at rediscovering parts of herself that had lain dormant under responsibility and habit. And it wasn't long before she noticed changes in the way she moved through her own home, the way she set the table with care when Liam came over, the way she smiled more readily, the way she lingered over conversations, savoring his thoughts and words, feeling that delicate pull between excitement and caution. And though she never acted inappropriately, never breached the trust of her marriage, the emotional intimacy was undeniable, a quiet, invisible thread weaving itself through her life, reshaping the texture of her days. And when she caught herself thinking about what it might feel like to hold hands, to walk beside him in the city streets, to share small touches that were entirely innocent yet charged with unspoken emotion, she realized how deeply this unexpected presence had begun to influence her heart. And even simple gestures, a shared laugh, a knowing glance, a pause in conversation, sent waves of warmth and curiosity through her, leaving her both afraid and fascinated by her own feelings. And one evening, as she prepared tea and Liam sat quietly at the counter, she noticed the way the light caught his hair, the easy grace of his movements, the way he seemed completely comfortable in her space, and she felt a shiver of awareness, a gentle recognition that her life was subtly shifting, that emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel for years were rising to the surface. And though she tried to remain composed, to anchor herself to the life she had with David, she couldn't ignore the truth that this bond with Liam was awakening parts of her heart that had been dormant, parts that longed for attention, for understanding, for laughter and shared moments that felt rare and precious. And as the days continued, she found herself increasingly reflective, analyzing the texture of her emotions, the intensity of her responses, and the quiet thrill she felt when Liam's presence filled the room. And she realized that love was not simple, not always linear, and not always constrained to one path. And that human hearts could experience multiple layers of connection at once, without necessarily diminishing the love they already held. And in those moments of reflection, Anna began to embrace a sense of self-awareness, understanding that her feelings for Liam were not about replacing David, but about rediscovering herself, her capacity to feel deeply, to connect meaningfully, to laugh freely, and to sense the spark of life that routine had dimmed. And even as she worried about crossing boundaries, she found herself appreciating the clarity that Liam's friendship brought, the gentle way he reflected parts of her back to herself, parts she had forgotten existed. And she realized that this experience, this unexpected presence, was teaching her about emotional honesty, about the power of attention, about the subtle ways that connection could reshape a life, and that it was possible to experience warmth, affection, and emotional closeness without betrayal, that love could be expansive, nuanced, and capable of holding complexity. And as she prepared for another evening with Liam, organizing the living room, arranging tea, and anticipating conversation, she felt her heart racing with a mix of excitement and anxiety, aware that these feelings were new, stirring, and transformative, and yet entirely innocent. And in that innocent transformation, she found a sense of liberation, a recognition that human hearts could grow in unexpected directions, that joy and longing could coexist, that emotional awakening did not need to threaten the life she valued, and that sometimes, a single person entering a quiet life could illuminate corners of the heart left dim by routine, that gentle attentiveness, thoughtful words, and shared moments of laughter could open windows to new awareness, self-reflection, and emotional depth. And Anna felt gratitude, confusion, longing, and hope all at once, realizing that her journey was only beginning, that the days ahead with Liam present in her life, even occasionally, even in small ways, would continue to teach her about herself, about love, about the complexity of human connection, and that this gentle, unexpected presence had already begun to transform her, subtly, profoundly, and irrevocably, leaving her both exhilarated and thoughtful, ready to navigate the uncharted currents of her heart with care, awareness, and the quiet excitement of discovery. Anna could feel the tension growing in her heart as days passed, a tension that had begun subtly with Liam's visits but now pulsed with every glance, every word, every shared laugh that felt just slightly too long, and she realized that the warmth his presence brought was now inseparable from the quiet ache of longing she felt for something deeper, a connection she hadn't realized she needed. And yet, as much as her heart stirred, the love and loyalty she held for David remained steadfast, anchoring her in a life that was familiar, safe, and full of shared history. Yet she couldn't ignore the quiet, irresistible pull toward Liam, whose gentle attention seemed to notice every small detail, the way she absent-mindedly tucked her hair behind her ear, the way she poured her tea, the little sighs she released when a memory or thought crossed her mind. And these observations, though innocent and kind, made her feel exposed in a way that was thrilling, unnerving, and intoxicating all at once, and she began to question the boundaries she had set for herself, wondering how it was possible to feel such a connection without crossing a line, how the heart could hold both affection for a longtime partner and fascination for someone new. And as the days grew busier with work and errands, she found herself thinking about Liam even when she was with David, noticing how she compared small gestures, how she longed for conversations that went beyond surface topics, and how easily her laughter came when Liam was around. Yet with David, the conversation felt routine, familiar, safe, yet lacking that spark of exhilaration that reminded her of who she was before life had become so structured. And one afternoon, a coincidence brought all three of them together in the city, David meeting Liam by chance, and the air immediately thickened with subtle tension that Anna could feel pressing against her chest, a mixture of anticipation, excitement, and fear. And while David was unaware, chatting easily about work projects, Liam's gaze lingered a second longer on Anna than necessary, and her heart skipped, caught between loyalty and curiosity, caught between the warmth of love and the thrill of emotional intimacy. And the encounter, though casual on the surface, left Anna thinking long after it ended, replaying the moment, analyzing expressions, gestures, and unspoken communication. And she felt a stirring she couldn't yet name, a realization that human emotions were layered, fluid, and capable of surprising depth. And when she returned home that evening, she noticed how her thoughts wandered, how she reflected on every conversation, every laugh, every fleeting touch that had passed unnoticed, and she began to see clearly that Liam's presence had awakened something in her, not a desire to betray, but a desire to feel fully, to be seen, to connect emotionally in ways that went beyond routine and obligation. And she wondered if David would ever notice the subtle changes in her energy, the way she smiled differently, the way her heart raced for reasons he couldn't yet perceive. And she questioned herself, her feelings, her choices, wondering if it was right to experience this awakening while being committed to someone she loved dearly. And yet, as she pondered, she realized that love was not always simple, that the heart could feel multiple forms of affection and connection without diminishing one for another, and that the lesson of emotional honesty was not about betrayal, but about understanding oneself and the complexities of desire, attention, and intimacy. And as the week unfolded, Anna found more moments with Liam. Brief encounters that were innocent yet charged with emotional resonance, moments where he shared stories from work or childhood memories, and Anna felt herself laughing more freely, speaking more openly, reflecting more deeply on her own life, and feeling alive in ways she hadn't in years. And with each passing day, the tension inside her grew, a delicate mix of excitement, fear, longing, and awareness, knowing that her emotions were evolving in response to someone who had entered her life unexpectedly, someone who made her reflect on the vibrancy of living, the beauty of connection, and the power of being truly seen. And it was in these quiet yet intense moments that Anna recognized the subtle transformation of her heart, a change that did not erase her love for David but layered it with new awareness, new depth, and a sense of emotional richness that she hadn't allowed herself to experience before. And one evening, as she prepared tea and Liam sat in the living room, telling a story that made her laugh until tears formed, she noticed the way he observed her, not with desire but with attentiveness, and it struck her how deeply humans could connect without crossing lines, how friendship and understanding could touch the soul and awaken parts of the heart that had been dormant. And she realized that she had been craving more than comfort, more than routine, more than the predictability of life. She had been craving attention, recognition, emotional depth, and laughter, and Liam's presence, though temporary, was teaching her that the heart could grow in unexpected directions, that love could be multifaceted, that longing could coexist with loyalty, that emotional awakening was not betrayal but self-discovery. And yet, despite this clarity, the tension was undeniable. A subtle pressure that made her question every glance, every word, every touch, a tension that reminded her that life and the heart were never simple, that feelings were fluid, and that the choices we made mattered deeply. And Anna began to notice changes in her own behavior. How she lingered in conversations, how she smiled at small gestures, how she found herself daydreaming about shared moments that might never happen, and even as guilt whispered, she acknowledged the truth of her emotions, the awakening Liam had brought, and the realization that love, in its purest form, could expand to hold understanding, connection, and growth without eroding the foundations of what was already precious. And as she lay in bed at night, reflecting on the day, she replayed every interaction, every subtle glance, every laugh shared, and wondered how her life had shifted so quietly yet profoundly, realizing that the heart's capacity for feeling, longing, and connection was more intricate than she had ever understood, that the presence of someone unexpected could illuminate desires, strengths, vulnerabilities, and joys that had been hidden under routine, and that this awareness was transforming not just her emotions but the way she viewed love, commitment, and herself. And she began to embrace the complexity, understanding that emotional truth was not always comfortable, that longing could coexist with love, that excitement could coexist with loyalty, and that the subtle tension in her heart was not a danger but a sign that she was alive, awake, and growing. And she recognized that the journey ahead would not be simple, that choices would need care, that emotions would need navigation. But she also understood that this awakening was a gift, a chance to explore depth, intimacy, and human connection in ways that were rare, beautiful, and profoundly moving. And as the evening ended and Liam said goodbye with a warmth in his eyes, Anna felt the pulse of life in her chest, the quiet thrill of awareness, the lingering touch of emotional intimacy, and she knew that the transformation had begun, that her heart was learning, evolving, and responding to someone who had entered her life unexpectedly, and that the tension, longing, and awareness she felt were part of a journey that was teaching her about love, self-discovery, and the complexity of human emotions, leaving her both exhilarated and contemplative, knowing that the days to come would test her understanding, deepen her reflections, and reveal the profound ways that an unexpected presence could shape a heart, a life, and the quiet evolution of love itself. The days that followed Liam's visits were filled with a quiet, unspoken tension that Anna could feel pulsing through her life, a tension that had begun with curiosity, grown through laughter, and now hovered at the edge of awareness, reminding her that the heart could be stirred by the gentlest of presences, and she found herself reflecting deeply on what had changed inside her, realizing that the subtle excitement, the warmth of attention, and the feeling of being truly noticed had transformed her, not by replacing love, but by teaching her to appreciate its complexity. And she noticed how David, though loving and steady, moved through their shared routines unaware of the layers of emotion quietly unfolding around them, how the small gestures that once seemed sufficient now felt familiar but not fully alive, and in contrast, Liam's presence brought a vibrancy that reminded her of who she was before life had become predictable, someone capable of laughter, of longing, of noticing beauty in small moments. And one evening, as she prepared tea and Liam sat quietly, sharing stories of his own life, Anna felt a wave of clarity wash over her, the realization that the heart could hold multiple truths at once, that loyalty and awakening were not mutually exclusive, and that this gentle presence had not disrupted her love for David but had expanded her understanding of herself and what love could mean. And she recognized that sometimes, life gifted opportunities for reflection disguised as coincidence, for growth disguised as friendship, for discovery disguised as casual interaction, and that Liam's arrival had been exactly such a gift, a mirror held up to her own soul, showing her depth, joy, and emotional richness she had forgotten, and she began to notice how these interactions shaped her daily life, how she lingered in small conversations, how she laughed more freely, how she approached her routines with renewed energy, and even the simple act of preparing a room for conversation, setting a cup of tea, or listening attentively became infused with intention and mindfulness. And while guilt occasionally whispered reminders of boundaries, she recognized that her emotions were honest, authentic, and self-aware, and that this awareness allowed her to navigate her feelings with care and integrity, honoring her marriage while embracing the lessons of her heart. And as the days turned into weeks, Liam's visits became less frequent, yet the impact lingered. The conversations, laughter, and shared moments replaying in her mind, reminding her that connection and growth were not always tied to physical presence, and she realized that the transformation she had experienced was not dependent on action, but on attention, reflection, and emotional openness, and it shaped the way she interacted with David, bringing new depth, patience, and tenderness into their marriage. As she approached him with renewed curiosity, listening with presence, speaking with care, and noticing details she had previously overlooked, and she felt that their bond, though familiar, had gained subtle layers of understanding and emotional resonance, a quiet enrichment that allowed them to connect in ways that were more meaningful, more attentive, and more alive. And Anna began to see that love itself was not static, that it could grow, adapt, and deepen when nurtured with awareness, honesty, and reflection. And Liam's role, though external, had acted as a catalyst for this growth, showing her that awakening could coexist with commitment, that excitement could coexist with loyalty, that reflection could coexist with daily life, and that human emotions were capable of complexity, depth, and nuance that often surprised even the most careful observer. And one evening, as she sat with David watching the sunset from their balcony, the sky painted in soft shades of pink and gold, she felt a quiet contentment, an awareness that her heart had changed, evolved, and matured through these experiences, that the stirrings she had felt were not signs of weakness or betrayal but of vitality and growth. And she recognized that relationships were living entities, shaped not just by actions, but by attention, emotional presence, and understanding, and that Liam's departure from the city, though bittersweet, had left a lasting impression, a subtle imprint on her heart that reminded her to value connection, presence, and awareness in every interaction, to cherish the joy of laughter, the warmth of shared attention, and the beauty of being fully seen. And she realized that this transformation was both a gift and a responsibility, a chance to approach love and life with greater consciousness, to honor the people in her life while embracing the lessons that unexpected presences bring. And as David turned to her, smiling gently, she felt the richness of her heart, the depth of her emotions, and the clarity of her mind, understanding that love could be renewed, relationships could be strengthened, and the heart could expand to hold joy, longing, and growth simultaneously. And in that moment, Anna knew that she was ready to move forward with gratitude, awareness, and a deepened sense of self, embracing both the love she had always known and the lessons she had learned from someone who entered her life unexpectedly, quietly, and profoundly. And she understood that this transformation was not about loss, but about enrichment, that life's surprises could be beautiful teachers, that emotional awakening was not danger but insight, and that the heart, when open, could navigate complexity with grace, resilience, and tenderness. And as she reflected on the journey of the past weeks, she felt a sense of peace, a feeling that she had grown not just as a partner but as a person, that love was not confined to habit, that connection was not limited to expectation, and that the quiet lessons of an unexpected presence could ripple through life, shaping understanding, deepening appreciation, and creating a richer, more attentive, and more emotionally fulfilling experience of love, life, and human connection. And she realized that this awareness would guide her in the days to come, reminding her to listen with presence, to act with kindness, to notice the subtleties of emotion, to embrace growth, and to carry the memory of what had been awakened in her heart, gently, thoughtfully, and fully, so that love, in all its forms, could continue to flourish, deepen, and illuminate the life she shared with David, enriched by the lessons of connection, the beauty of awareness, and the quiet, transformative power of someone unexpected who had entered her life not to disrupt, but to awaken, inspire, and help her see herself and her love in a new, more vibrant light, leaving her heart open, alive, and ready for whatever the future might bring.